The 2025 U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency report lays it out plainly. Pakistan sees India as a fundamental threat to its existence. This perception isn't new. It's the spine of Islamabad, or for that matter, Rawalpindi's military doctrine. It explains Pakistan's aggressive nuclear modernization, dependence on Chinese military support, and constant stoking of cross-border tensions. It also explains why Pakistan sponsored attacks from 1947's tribal invasion to 2025's Pahalgam massacre, form a bloody arc of denial and deflection. India may be advancing globally, but Pakistan still seems stuck in 1947. The 2025 DIA report doesn't mince words. It outlines how Pakistan's national security doctrine is entirely predicated on the belief that India is out to dismantle it. This is not merely strategic hedging, it's psychological entrenchment. According to the report, Pakistan's political and military elite operate under the assumption that India harbors ambitions to dismember the Pakistani state. This paranoia isn't theoretical. It shapes budgetary decisions, foreign alliances, and even the internal propaganda machine. The report notes that this perception has been institutionalized across military academies, intelligence briefings, and public education. School children are taught more about India's threat than about democratic values or economic development. It's not security policy, it's their national identity. The U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency report of 2025 clearly says that Pakistan considers India an existential threat, but also goes on to elaborate on the ties between Pakistan and China and how Pakistan depends majorly on China when it comes to its defense procurement. To discuss this and more, I'm being joined by a security expert from Wilson Center, Michael Kugelman. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global. Let's begin with the report itself. India, an existential threat, that's the argument, or is that certainly something that Pakistan has been, and the strategic community has been thinking is necessary now for them to procure and to acquire the kind of arms they're trying to acquire from various countries?
Right. So, I mean, this assessment here from the U.S. Defense community, it's not necessarily a new one in the sense that one has often heard this notion of Pakistan viewing India as an existential threat, particularly the Pakistani military establishment. And what I take away from this intelligence assessment is how there is a link made between Pakistan viewing India as an existential threat and the nuclear factor. So, I mean, the assessment explicitly says that Pakistan regards India as an existential threat, and that has translated to policies that include developing battlefield nuclear weapons. There's also discussion in the assessment about Pakistan's modernizing its nuclear arsenal. So it seems that one of the main focuses on Pakistan in this assessment is on Pakistan's proliferation policies, which I think is certainly notable, given that if we look at the recent India-Pakistan confrontation, that one could argue that one reason why the U.S. was increasingly concerned about the trajectory of the confrontation was fears of the possibility of nuclear escalation. But yes, absolutely. I mean, to your point, I think that the concern on the part of the U.S. is very clear here, that because Pakistan, in the view of the assessment, views India as an existential threat, it's leading to a variety of policies on the part of Pakistan that include taking a number of steps that will be concerning for U.S. interests, and that includes doubling down on Pakistan's very significant military relationship with China.
Well, that certainly is the most important aspect. We see President Trump post the operations that were carried out by India, Michael, we see President Trump, one, having taken credit but also because Pakistan agreed with the president, he's been lauding the Pakistani premier and almost hyphenating India and Pakistan in a scenario where China is only to gain with any conflict between India and Pakistan. What's the reading within Washington, D.C.? Who's advising President Trump? What's the assessment, and why are they not looking at the real threat over here?
I think that we shouldn't overstate this idea of re-hyphenation. I mean, yes. I mean, if you look at the messaging coming from President Trump and from other senior U.S. officials in once the ceasefire was announced, yes, it appears to reflect re-hyphenation. But I think that the broader U.S. policy has not changed, and I don't think that we should take these comments by Trump as an expression, as a formal expression of policy. I think that much of what he said has been what I would describe as off the cuff. I think that in due course, once things blew over in the coming days and weeks, we're going to have what I would describe as a reversion to the norm, in the sense that the U.S. will go back to emphasizing the strengthening of its partnership with India, which of course has been the case for several decades. And it will go back to looking at its relationship with Pakistan as a relationship that has to be a workable one, but the one that's nonetheless going to be a limited one. There are so many very strong strategic and commercial and other imperatives from a U.S. perspective governing the need to ensure that the relationship with India remains what it is, while separating that from any considerations about Pakistan. But I would say this. One of the reasons why we got to this point where Trump was saying what he did and other U.S. officials were saying what they were, about the recent crisis, is the factor of escalation risks, right? As the crisis, as the confrontation became more intense, and as the hostilities became more concerning, I think that attention in Washington focused on the need to call for de-escalation and essentially to call for both sides, and I emphasize the term both sides, to work together to bring down tensions. But that's crisis management policy. It's not a broader view or a broader U.S. policy toward India or Pakistan in terms of hyphenation. So this is why I think that in due course, we're going to return to how things were before this confrontation exploded. However, I would argue this: the longer that President Trump continues to make comments like the ones he's made, I think the more difficult it will be for New Delhi to simply shrug this off as a case of Trump being Trump, and more,
That's
get to a
true.
point where there'd be worry about what could come next.